Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. Today we're very special guest on the show, a returning guest. We have Bryce Street, who's an opening batsman, made his debut for Queensland in the Sheffield Shield in 2019 and won the title in 2020 to 2021 season. He's also represented Australia A and holds the record for one of the highest scores in Australian domestic second 11 history, with the record breaking 345 of 430 for Queensland's second 11 2019. So I wanted to get Bryce on the show to discuss day one or the first test, of the Ashes, and kind of unpack Bazball, unpack the Australian lineup, and the positives and the negatives from the game and the result of the game, and also talk a bit about what to expect in the second test. So thank you for coming back on the show, Bryce.
No, cheers. Thanks for having me, Tenzin. Good to be back on the show and get to talk some more cricket.
Yeah, I'm keen. And speaking of the previous episode we did, I've got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people really enjoyed the conversation. I actually had people that play, I think, in second 11 level or even state cricket that have had a lot of good things to say about that episode. So
That's good.
that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely always keen to kind of have you back when I can to have these kind of conversations. So speaking of the cricket in particular with the Ashes, everyone had a lot of opinions regarding Bazball. I think Bazball in a way has revolutionized cricket in the sense that people are starting to see Test cricket differently, which is really interesting. It's also got a lot of more spectators, especially from maybe the English background, and that's reignited their love for Test cricket because of the excitement that brings to Test cricket. So, in general, like, what are your thoughts about Bazball in the lead up to the Test, and what do you make of Bazball during the last Test match?
I think Bazball has been a revolution. I think it's changed the way that Test cricket has been played across the world. I think that obviously when it first came to be back when McCullum took over, it was like, it's flat track cricket. You have to play on wickets that don't do anything to be able to take the game on like that. And I think in patches, it has shown that it also has been able to have success on wickets that move a bit, and being ultra positive on wickets like that and taking the game back to bowlers has put teams on the back foot. But also, I think it's shown that it has crumbled. I do think that the first test is a bit of an example of that, where wicket nipped around. It wasn't massively green, but it had enough in it for quicks that it was a fair game. I just think that their batting struggled to stand up to what was realistically a very good game of bowling from Mitchell Starc and the rest of the quicks. And then I think the irony in that Travis Head then came out and used their own game against them and their own game plan to then basically wrap up a very good run chase and what's probably going to be a very historic knock in terms of Ashes innings going forward in a couple of years' time. I think it was pretty special. And I think it's going to open up a lot of talking points about Bazball for the rest of this series. Obviously, England aren't going to change how they play after one test. They've stuck to this method of cricket for 4 years now. Nothing's going to change that. No, not one result is going to change that, and they're going to stick this series out doing the same thing. And it's just going to be whether it comes off and the English love it or it doesn't, and then there might be a conversation about how they're playing and what they're kind of doing with their Test cricket. But I guess we'll have to wait and see until the end of the series for that.
Brendan McCullum made some comments after the Test match, which indicates what you mentioned, that they're going to stick to how they've been playing, essentially. And it makes you question, like, for example, in Australia, the boundary is a little bigger, like in Perth. The boundary on around square leg. Like, I remember in the first innings when Jamie Smith was batting, people, especially the commentators, were making a point that the boundaries are really big. Like, why is he trying to target it? Because that Bazball mindset is just kind of go at everything and anything, and essentially back yourself. But I think in that situation where you obviously got good quicks bowling at you, and plus you got some really big boundaries. Maybe perhaps being a little bit more circumspect and picking a moments would have been a better situation or a better thing to do in that situation. So what are your thoughts about the mindset of Bazball and the way that they go about, despite, they can always tinker with it, but it doesn't seem like there is some tinkering in that process. But have you noticed any tinkering in Bazball? Or is it just kind of the same blueprint from day dot?
No, I think it's changed. It's evolved. I think it goes through waves, and like when they're going well, they go hard. And I think the greatest example that I can think of was when South Africa went to England in 2020, maybe 2022, just before we played them in the Ashes. And basically, Dean Elgar came out and said, "Oh, if they play that way, we're going to destroy them." And he was accurate for the first test. They absolutely poleaxed them, first game of the series. And then there was a definite change of game plan and attitude. Yes, it was still aggressive, but there was a definite toning down of how aggressive they were for the rest of that series. But they did end up, I think, winning the series 2-1 in a 4-test series. So I think they've shown that they have the ability to change and alter how hard they want to go. Whether they choose to do that in this series, pink ball at the Gabba, we know it's going to do a lot. So I guess maybe they'll wait and see about how juicy it actually is. It's done nothing but storm up here every day for the last week. So there's been plenty of moisture around. I don't know what the wicket's going to be looking like, but they've still got a full week before the test starts. So they probably haven't even started making the wicket yet. But I do think that the pink ball tests are always funny because like people only really focus on like the last 2 hours of every day when it gets dark and the ball starts hooping around corners. That's the time when everyone wants to bowl in pink ball cricket. But I also think there are some great opportunities to push the game and get on the front foot when you bat in the daytime against the old ball, because it does go soft and it does do less because the seam isn't as hard and doesn't get as much nip and seam movement out of the wicket during the daytime when it goes softer. So I think it's going to be about picking your moments in a pink ball game and being able to get on the front foot and be aggressive and show intent at the right times, but also being able to negate those tough periods, because I don't know how well it's going to go if you try and be aggressive against the pink ball at 8 p.m. at night with a new rock against Starc. That's my only concern.
So have you had the opportunity to play using the pink ball?
Yeah,
by any chance?
I played one Shield game under lights with a pink ball, and it went horrendously for me.
And what was the big difference? Was it just the swinging of itself was more exaggerated? And you said the whole difference between daytime and nighttime. So can you walk us through what your advice would be for batsmen in those conditions and situation?
Yeah, so I didn't actually get to bat during the daytime. So we had to bat 2 night sessions, both innings up front with the new ball, and I did not make it through either of those. It was against Victoria, and Sam Elliott got me out in both innings. I only lasted about probably 10 or 12 overs, I think. But I just think like, especially in Brisbane, because there's such a heavy dew that comes at night time because of the humidity, once that falls, the wicket then really quickens up. So I think like once that surface water then lies on the wicket, I think, yes, the ball isn't going to nip as much because obviously you have that water sitting on top of the wicket that's going to kind of make the ball skid. But then also like the ball just in the humid air at night time under lights then starts really swinging. And that was probably the most noticeable thing was like yes, that the pink ball swings in daytime, but then like how much it really starts doing under lights. And then facing someone like a Fergus O'Neill with the new ball before, like as the opening bowler, like yes, and the ball was still nipping around because he's very skillful. But then like compared to what facing him with a red ball was like during daytime wickets, like the seam movement was much less noticeable. Doesn't make him any easier to face, but then it changes how you kind of bowl to the conditions at nighttime.
Those are fascinating insights. And speaking of, I guess, the England bowlers and the conditions that you've described, like we saw in the last test that the four quicks from England all were bowling essentially above 140 kilometers an hour. So is that an opportunity for them to even go more Bazball in that sense, or more aggressive in the bowling sense? Because, like as you described, because of the moisture at night time, the dew, and there'll be extra skid, that might actually favor England. Because I don't think, personally, as much as we know how well Mitch Starc bowled, how amazing he was, I think as a unit, England's paces are definitely something to. I think one of the best probably pace units that have toured Australia recent times, so they might actually pose a really big threat in Brisbane under lights against the ping ball.
Yeah, I think, and obviously it's hard because they're like, there's not a massive amount of Test cricket played between Wood, Archer, and Atkinson. Atkinson is still fairly new to Test cricket. Archer's been injured for a long time, hasn't played a lot, and Mark Wood is in a similar boat but has played significantly more than the other two. But I think it's the first Test series that I've looked at, and especially with Cummins and Hazelwood missing from the first Test, and Hazelwood potentially from the entire series with a calf strain, where I've looked at our attack and gone, we actually have the potential to maybe be out bowled by an opposition side. And I'm not saying that they're a better bowling attack, but like I look at it on paper and I go, holy crap, that's not bad. And then obviously they showed very much what they're going to be capable of in Perth. But then obviously their batters then missed out on a really good opportunity to then drive home a massive lead in the second innings once they skidded us and allowed us to get back into the game. And then once Trav got going, then, well, there's nothing you can do to stop that, no matter how good your bowling attack is. And like, it's just one of those things where momentum is so important. But then I guess it's also the other aspect of one of my things with Bazball, and obviously short tests aren't going to have a massive impact upon this. But because, let's say we have a couple of tests in the series go 5 days, Sydney or Melbourne, the amount of overs that Archer, Atkinson, and Wood are going to have under their belt in comparison to potentially the Australian quicks, purely because England score faster, but they bat less overs versus Australia, who are going to play more conventional Test cricket, may make the same scores, but if you do it in 40 overs more, that's still 40 overs more that your quicks have to bowl. And England have shown that they're not going to always pick a spinner in Shawab Bashir. And obviously, Australia are always going to play Lyon if he's healthy because he's the GOAT. But if you don't have a quick and you're bowling lots of overs in Test cricket, like the overs start to stack up in these series. And yes, a 2-day test, you have then 10 days to turn around. You've only bowled 30 overs for the game, at best maybe 35. But if we have a 5-day test, go the full journey, and English quicks are doing 40, 45 over test matches, and then you have to back up 5 or 6 days later and do it again, I think with how injury prone England's attack is and how little Test cricket some of them have played recently, I think it does open up the potential for there to be injuries. And I don't think anyone's wishing that upon English bowlers. We want a great series. We want them all to be healthy. But when you got these guys who all bowl express gas and they're all having to bowl bulk overs in 5 Test match series, you then either have to load manage and let them sit tests, or you just have to be really careful and like make sure that they're looking after themselves, which I'm sure they're doing. But it's just so important.
And to add to that as well, because we know Pat Cummins injured, is coming back from injury, and Hazelwood is coming back from injury. You can say that this isn't necessarily Australia's best paces. So I mean, pending, we're hoping Josh Hazelwood and Pat Cummins do play in at some point in this series. They'll still be somewhat fresh in the sense that they aren't tired from bowling, or so like they'll be kind of fit and fresh, ready to go, maybe by the second or third Ashes test match, whereas obviously England's best bowlers are already playing and they have already 20 overs or so that they've bowled and
Yes.
they're more likely to get injured again. So it's like the trajectory for England bowlers isn't looking the best when it comes to having their full quartet, firing, fit and firing. Whereas Australia's, it wasn't necessarily Australia's best pace attack, you can say, at the who played in the first test.
Yeah, and I think we are probably fortunate enough in that, like, Doggett and Bowen played the first test. Two very much test level bowlers who, like, have been waiting in the wings for a long time for an opportunity. And realistically, we have a fistful of other bowlers that you could play who would also then slot well into Test cricket. So I think we're fortunate to have that depth. But then I guess the question that I want to look at is, like, Jofra Atkinson and Wood aside, if they have to then rest and miss Test matches, what's the rest of their attack going to look like? I actually haven't seen what the rest of their squad is that's travelling, because I'm assuming Josh Tongue is here and healthy. Yeah, so he's good, but then, like, what? And then you got Bryden Cass. He's the fourth seamer. Like, that. What's below those guys that they've brought over?
Yeah, and speaking of which, as much as we know how good England's best test bowlers are, Travis had, still managed to score 123 runs off 83 balls. So I wanted to touch on that specifically. Like, what makes Travis Head so good that, he doesn't necessarily have the most orthodox technique in that sense. And, obviously in this case, Usman Khawaja was injured and he had to fill in as the opener, and he was able to be so successful. And he also made England's bowlers, look non-threatening, which is a bit crazy because, as we said, they're very, dangerous in the context of, or in comparison to other bowlers around in the test world. So walk us through a bit about what makes Travis Head so good.
I think when Trav bats like that, it's the ability to hit the same ball in about 4 different locations that just makes him so hard to bowl to. You can bowl a ball at the top of fourth stump. It can disappear over square leg for 6. It can disappear over third man for 6. It can disappear over cover or mid off for 6. And it can probably disappear over mid on for 6. Like, just depending on where he wants to stand and how he wants to move, like, it just makes him so tough to bowl to. And yes, obviously England are going to go short ball plan once he gets set, because that's probably one of the least comfortable aspects of his game. And yes, it's the least comfortable, but he also makes scoring off it look so easy. Get inside at 6, back away, slap over point 4, 6. Like it, and then all of a sudden you've bowled 6 short balls that have gone for 20 runs, and you're like, oh crap, we've only got 200 to defend here. Like, we're leaking them at a faster rate than we can, like, afford to. And then once, like, that happens, then you're stuck second guessing. And, like, yes, if you have more runs to play with on the board, then you have more margin for error and the ability to leak a few more runs. I think, as we saw with Australia's approach with the Harry Brook short ball plan, and purely in the mindset, like, there was no target to defend, so they were just happy to stick at it a bit longer. But then, like, when you've got those short totals and you feel like scoreboard pressure is creeping up on you as a bowling side, like, once you go for a couple of boundaries, you get a bit nervy about whether you want to continue or not. And I just think he did a really good job of putting pressure back on an attack that up until that point had its way with Australia's batting unit in the game. And, like, yes, there's a reality that that's not going to come off every time if he tries to do that. But, like, you can safely say that it's come off once so far in the series, and it won us a test match. And, like, I think that's a record that you can live with. Like, if he's going to fail a couple of times doing that, and then he comes off a few more times, as long as when he's coming off, he's winning test matches, like, the failures don't matter, because the rest of our batting lineup is so good and is so capable of picking up the slack. Like, if he's going to be our best batter for this series, which is crazy to say when you have Smudge, Marnus, like Greeny, Carey, Usman, and Wetherald up top. Like, that's a pretty good batting lineup. And we're talking about, like, a guy that averages 60, a guy that averages 50, Usman, who's scored 7,000 or 8,000 test runs already. Like, we've got so much talent and also a lot of different styles of play that really balance what Heady brings to the team. So like you haven't got 7 guys going hard up top. You've got conventional batters, you've got guys that are going to play their game, and like Heady is just one cog in that wheel. And like when that comes off, like that's going to be great for us. But when it doesn't mean that you've got 6 guys playing the exact same way behind him. You've got guys playing their own games because everyone's got their own style of cricket within this team.
And what's incredible as well is that when you look at the England bowlers in the fourth innings, the lowest economy out of all of them was Jofra Archer at 5.62, whereas everyone else, the second lowest is Gus Atkinson at 6.77. Bryson Castle's going at 8.25. Mark Wood was going at 7.66. So once Travis Head gets going, he doesn't stop. It doesn't matter which bowler it is, which is really amazing. And do you think that he does Bazball better than England? Is my question.
I mean, I like the term Travball more than Bazball, but look, I think, yes, he gave him a taste of his own medicine, but I also think that he's been playing that way for a long time in Test cricket himself. I just don't think it gets talked about as much because it's not a whole team playing that way. It's just one guy playing his game to the best of his abilities and playing a style that suits his batting skills in Test cricket.
Do you think that he has been playing like that? Because there was that time where he got dropped, and I remember when the late Shane Warne would say had a lot of faith in Travis Head, but then I think one of the technical issues is that he would get caught outside off. He was kind of poking at balls outside off and getting caught behind. So I don't. It was quite a while ago, so I can't remember exactly how he would be batting at that time. But I don't recall him batting the way he is now compared to back then. If that
I
makes sense.
think I think one thing that I do love about Bazball is that the confidence that the coaching staff and the high performance staff have instilled in these players to go out and back themselves and play their game. And there's going to be no fallback or drawback upon playing that game plan and getting out doing it. And I think being able to instill that belief in players is really important if you want to get the best out of them. But there then comes a borderline where it gets silly. But I also think in that regard, I think the confidence that Cricket Australia and coaching staff, high performance staff have instilled in Trav Head to then go out and do what he does best, I think has really gotten the best out of him. And yes, like 120 off 80 balls is probably the extreme end of that scale where he's gone out and been ultra positive. But also in a run chase where you're chasing 200, like all it takes is for him to get 60 off 40, like half of that score, and you've already wrestled all the momentum away from like the opposition. Like we're not chasing 400, we're not chasing 350, we're chasing 205 or whatever it was, 220. And like in that shorter scale, like being able to go out and do that straight off the mark and like get on the front foot early, like it just changes the game. And like obviously he's given the green light to go and do that when he walked out there. And I think that's just great to see.
And do you think that he should be Australia's opener for the foreseeable future? Because he adds that aggression to the top, and we've seen other batsmen sort of bat the same. And now, like when we see that Australia has a momentum up top, and I feel like we saw glimpses of that when Sam Constance was opening the batting and that MCG Test match, how aggressive he was. And after that, everyone else sort of batted around him, so to speak. And then I think shades of that we can see. Obviously, Travis Head. The way he bats up top, everyone else can kind of feel at ease. There's less, I think, anxiety around what's happening with the ball, whatever, because you have some guy that's taking it on, and it just makes it a lot easier. Like we see Labuschagne isn't necessarily like he was going at 100 strike rate in the fourth innings, and he was just batting with him himself. But I guess because Travis had kind of opened up the game for the rest of his team, it just makes batting easier for the rest of the team essentially.
Yes. Look, because I love Travi and Harry bats, but I think if you're having a conversation about him opening the batting long term in Test cricket, I don't think that's a fruitful one. Like I think him batting at 5 allows him to play his game and also have the most consistency playing his game. Like, I just think, like, with a technique like that, like, it's not going to come off at some point. And I like Australian media is quite harsh, like when things aren't going our way. And I can just imagine like yes, like when it comes off, like the media loves it. But like, what's the scrutiny going to be like when he's getting out slashing, nicking in the first over and one for none? Like, I just think that like it's a live by the sword, die by the sword if you open the batting with him. And I just see a man of his talents, and like it's like, well, I think you'd be mad to not bat him at 5. Like, I think Wetherald is good enough to do it. I'm assuming Kawaja's back spasms are going to be fine by the time that we get to a week's time at the Gabba. I haven't spoken to him, so I wouldn't know. But like 10 days is a long time turnaround for that kind of injury. I think I'm not an expert, so don't hold me to that. But I just think that like I just love to see him at 5 for the rest of the series, because if he walks in at 3 for 150, 3 for 200, and he's doing that, that's even better. And the ball's going to be flat. The bowlers are going to be tired. He's not having to do it with a fresh rock on a fresh wicket, and like it just comes off. And then all of a sudden we make 500 in 110 overs, and we're in a real box seat to then drive the game for the rest of the test match.
Definitely. And speaking of the next test match, what changes do you expect England to make to the bowling lineup? Because they didn't play any spinner in the last game, and Joe Root was the only kind of part-time spinner in that lineup. Do you expect, with your experience of the Gabba?
No spinner. There'll be no spinner. Not in a pink ball game. They'll just back themselves to have 5 quicks, and they'll try and bat themselves into a position where they can take the new ball under lights twice.
And in terms of, I think Pat Cummins possibly might be making a return as well, and I'm sure his stats in, with the pink ball at Gabba, very good, very world class as well. Essentially, do you expect? Bazball theme is like they're going to continue batting the same way, but what sort of advice would you have for the team in order to maximize, their runs on the Gabba wicket?
I just think that. I think you have to be positive, but you're going to have to be a lot more selective with your scoring off length. Like, I just think that, yes, the ball bounces more in this country. And I think Zak Crawley's dismissal and Harry Brook's dismissal was a really good example of that, where you're caught driving on the up, pushing at balls, and like the extra bounce just catches you out. And I just think that they're going to have to work harder to try and create scoring lengths by either like using their feet. It's like something that Benny Duckett actually does really well, where he uses his feet to get at bowlers' lengths a lot more because he's shorter. But I think that's something that can be carried over by a lot of the other guys as well. Or you've just got to be patient and look to leave a bit more. Whether they're happy to do that or not, I don't know. That's going to be for them to figure out. But there's no world in which they're going to be able to drive on the up in a pink ball game at the Gabba. I don't think. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Like, test wickets can be flat at the Gabba, but I doubt for a pink ball which gets soft, they're going to have to leave a sizable amount of grass on it to keep that ball somewhat hard and in shape. So I think it's going to be able to offer a fair bit for most of the test match. It could be quite similar to Perth.
So in the case of, like, we know Zak Crawley got out for 2 ducks in the last test match, and we know that he's known for, his big booming drives down the ground. Are you suggesting that either in the Gabba pitch, either he gets to the ball, but because there's more bounce on the wicket, you'll probably have to stand ahead of the crease more than usual if he wants to get onto that length, or should he be more on the back foot, like waiting for that kind of cut shot because of the bounce?
Well, I think like he's such a strong driver of the ball because he's so big. And like, yes, he's a good puller and cutter of the ball, but I think that the moment that he can dominate length, it makes guys bowl shorter, and then he can use his back foot scoring options. But I just think if you're going to try and constantly drive on the up, and I just don't think the Australian attack is going to buy into bowling shorter. They're just going to want to keep seeing him drive on the up, drive on the up, drive on the up, because they're just going to feel like in this country you can't get away with it for long periods of time, and he's going to make a mistake. And like we've seen, like in the 2023 Ashes, when he got going, he gets going. Like it's good to watch, but he's just going to have to be able to change a few things if he's going to want to recreate and find that form in this country, because it's just such different batting climate and batting conditions that you can't do the same thing and expect the same results that you do in England.
And with Joe Root, like there was a lot of talk about him. We know how good of a player he is, in fabulous form in the last few years as well. And he didn't necessarily score too many runs in this last Test match. Do you feel like there's maybe a bit of expectation or nerves on him to I don't know, seeing Matthew Hayden hopefully not run around naked in around the ground? I don't know, like, first innings he got out for a duck, and the second, I think, innings he got out for 8 runs and he chopped on as well. So
Yeah.
usually, I don't know if we see that as often from someone as good as Joe Root. So what are your thoughts? Like, do you think it's just nerves, or it's just like nature of the pitch and he'll be back to scoring a truckload of runs hopefully in the next few games?
Look, I think every Australian cricket fan is pretty much like the batsman they're most scared of in this series is Joe Root. Guy's got over 13,000 Test runs to his name. It's a massive number, and he hasn't done it. Like, he's done it through pure volume. Yes, he's played a lot of Test cricket, but like the guy's averaging over 50. Like, that's a serious record. And I think that, yes, the weight of expectation of trying to win an Ashes here, and also Joe Root doesn't have a Test 100 in Australia, which obviously a lot of critics think that drought's going to be broken in this series because the guy is in such good form. But like at the end of the day, like if their top order doesn't fire around him, it puts a lot of pressure on him to perform and play his game. And like I think a lot of the success that he's had has come from everyone around him scoring so quickly and taking all of that pressure away from him. And he's been able to play his game very naturally within this side. As probably realistically as one of the like slower scoring batsmen within the Bazball era in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think that's been great to watch someone be able to still play his game, like having the skill level that he does and not completely go with the Bazball phase. But I just think that one Test isn't going to change his mentality. He's still probably one of the greatest ever English Test batters to ever do it. And there's still 8 more innings realistically left for him to stand up and perform. And like, he's probably going to go out and do that at some point. Like, the guy is great. And like 2 Test innings isn't going to change that. Like, yes, he got chopped on and nicked off.
Yeah, he got caught behind.
Yeah, chopped on and nicked off. And yeah, he might change a few things for the next Test match and how he wants to go about it. But it's Joe Root. Yeah.
Exactly. And speaking of which, I know a lot of people talking about Harry Brook because he looked good in the first innings, but I think someone that fell under the radar a little bit is Ollie Pope. Like, he did look good, to be honest, when I was watching him in both innings. Do you feel like he's doing the right things from a technical standpoint with his batting when it comes to batting in Australian pitches? And what would your advice be, I guess, for him and with his technique when it comes to batting at the Gabba?
I just think that like going into this series, like being in England leading up to this in the UK this summer, the 2 people that every Englishman was talking about for the Ashes was Crawley and Pope. Like probably the 2 guys that weren't in the best form coming into this series, and probably like the 2 most, what's the term I'm looking for? 2 most vulnerable batters in terms of technique and form for this country. And I think like Ollie Pope has shown that he's class, like he's got Test 100s to his name, but I just think he's struggled to be able to find the consistency to do it series in and series out. And like, yes, he doesn't have like the strongest of techniques, but also like he's got the game. Like, and at Test cricket level, he's done it enough times that like, he's shown that he has the ability to do it. Now it's just about how often he can. And like, yes, the Australians are going to know how to bowl to him and where to channel and target his weak points. But then it's just a matter of, as the series goes on, can he overcome that? Can he find ways to counteract that? Can he find ways to make them bowl somewhere else? That's going to be the biggest question for him to answer going forward in this series.
And do you think that, because we know, like, you think that England won't play with any spinners, but I think Australia will definitely be playing Nathan Lyon for sure. What advice would you have, I don't know, with your experience playing at the Gabba and especially with the pink ball? How does Nathan Lyon, do you feel like he has to kind of change the way he does bowl because of that dew factor or under lights? Does it behave differently for a spinner, and how does it behave differently?
I just think, like, realistically, I mean, like, this is being overly harsh, but like, if we have a new pink ball under lights, and we got 4 quicks, Gaz probably doesn't bowl that much under the lights. Yes, he probably will, and that means that the ball is going to skid more with the dew. But also, like, in terms of just his game plan, it's going to be a lot of bowling in the daylight with the older ball once the ball has stopped doing something in the air. And also, like, he has a good record at the Gabba. The ball bounces significantly more there than it does in other parts of the country. Brings in bat pads, slips much more into the game. Like, because even if it doesn't turn, it's still able to bounce, and that's how you can beguile batters in terms of being able to change your flight and your length. And I just think he's going to be able to provide a really good. If he doesn't take wickets, which is unlikely, I don't think. Just because of how skillful the guy is, he's still going to be able to provide a really good holding role whilst you're looking to either take wickets with the quicks or wait for the second new ball to arrive.
I think we covered a lot of ground there. I don't know if you had any thoughts you wanted to share regarding potentially the first test and anything that happened there, or any advice regarding how do you think the teams will prepare from a strategic standpoint at the Gabba?
I think, injuries aside, I think it's an unchanged 11 for both teams. I don't see anyone making any selections that would differ from what they brought into the first test. I think it's just too quick of a change if you change something now, like, injuries aside. And I just think, in terms of Starc's pink ball record at the Gabba, Cummins to potentially come back, I do have us winning this test. I also have a really good game from Marnus and Smudge on the cards. And I do think that Starc will surpass Wasim Akram for the most prolific wicket taker, left arm seam bowler in Test cricket this game as well.
Yeah, especially with Marnus playing at the Gabba and all the experience he has playing there, you would expect him to turn up some big runs in the next test as well. And
Yeah.
I think the really big point you mentioned, to reiterate, is the whole notion of Bazball, where because of how hard England will be going at the Australian bowlers will be bowling a lot less overs. And if the way that Australia play, they play the kind of orthodox traditional way, then essentially the England bowlers will be bowling a lot more overs. So I think it's something that doesn't actually get discussed as much, I feel, in certain circles. Everyone's talking about, how England play under Bazball, but no one really talks about how many overs they might need to bowl as a result of Bazball. So that's a really, really important point to keep note. And especially, like, 5 test match series, like, it goes on for a while, and it takes a lot of days. You've got 5 days. I mean, this time it was only 2 days, but something to take note of when it comes to stamina for bowlers as well.
Yeah. I just think, to kind of hammer the point home, I'll read the stat sheet from the 2023 Ashes, which was obviously a 2-all draw, in terms of average overs bowled per game. And that was Anderson 38.3, Broad 36.5, Robinson 45.4, Tongue 42, Wood 29.1, Wokes 37.4, Stokes 14.3. And then you compare that to the Australians of Cummins 31.4, Hazelwood 27.4, Boland 23.3, Green 11.5, Starc 32, Marsh 11.2. So I just think and like obviously I'm just reading numbers out loud, but like there is a significant difference in overs per game, nearly like double digits for most of the quicks in terms of how many overs they're having to back up. And across a 5-test series, and 50 overs less under your belt is literally a whole nother test match of bowling and a bit more.
Yeah, that's really significant numbers as well. It does take a toll, and it means that Australian bowlers are more fresh in that sense as well. So something to really keep note of and something to factor in. And it's something I don't know if like under in the England dressing room they even take this into account and sort of tinker, potentially like even consider to tinker with their approach because of these downsides to Bazball. So
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot of ground. But what would your predictions be? Like, who do you think will win the next Test match, and who do you think will be who will score the highest amount of runs in the next Test match, and who do you think will take the most wickets?
I have Starc to take most wickets again for the game. I think Archer will be leading wicket taker for England. Australia will win the Test match in what will be a close game. And I have the leading run scorer for the game to be Stephen Smith.
Amazing. So yeah, I'm keen to watch the game, and hopefully, pending you have time, we can review the second Test match and see how it went with our sort of predictions in this episode. So I appreciate your time, Bryce, to coming on the show and having this discussion. I think a lot of insights were shared that will benefit the audience. So wrap it up there. So thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. So if you wanted to check us out, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Subscribe to us there. We're on Apple iTunes. Also, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram. We make clips there, so make sure to share with your friends and family. So, for our special guest, Bryce, we wish you the best. This is Tanzim signing off. Thank you very much.